Emily, I know you're scrambling to put together your story, so thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Oh, I really appreciate being on the show. Thank you.
You were at that meeting today. They passed the ordinance, and I got to know, did they name it after you, considering you're the driving force behind what they voted on?
Well, no, Jenny, I think that'd be expecting a little bit too much from D.C. But, I mean, I'm so thrilled today, that people after me, residents of D.C., will be able to get guns so much easier, much less time, and save about $200 or more. So it's a really big step forward.
Yeah, can you give us any specifics about what was included in that ordinance?
Yeah, and what's really great about it is the bill was going to be law not until November because D.C. government laws have to wait 60 days, 60 congressional days, and Congress is in session until they're law. So today, the City Council moved this on an emergency basis, meaning that these provisions of this new gun law will go into effect as soon as tomorrow when the mayor signs it, and some just as late as July. So things are moving much quicker than we even expected. And the provisions in the law that are new is that there's no more ballistics tests for guns. The biggest change is that there's no more 5-hour class, which costs $225 at least. So that's been the thing that I've pushed the hardest on and said was the most burdensome, both in terms of my personal safety, in terms of the cost, in terms of the time involved, and that it couldn't even be taught in the district. So that's been eliminated, and the police are going to have a sort of training video that you'll watch probably online, maybe at the department. And then they're also eliminating the vision test. They're no longer requiring us to notarize documents related to gun registration. And they are taking away the requirement that you, I think I said vision test already, and that you also, I'm sorry, I'm just moving too fast. So there's several other provisions that they'll be removing, and one of them is also the law that it makes it a felony to have any ammunition that's not in the same caliber of a gun registered. So that will go away, so people can calmly have ammunition in any kind of caliber on their body. And unfortunately, all this doesn't change the fact that there's no carry laws in D.C., and we do have to register our guns. So it's not, a huge victory in the big picture, but in the small picture of D.C., it's a good change.
And there's no gun range, and there's no gun shop. Did they address that at all?
Right. Well, actually, those things are legal in D.C. It's just a matter of the zoning. It's just how the tricky way that they get to do that. No, they don't address it, and I don't think that's going to be a concern of theirs. But I took the chairman of the D.C. City Council, Kwame Brown, to a shooting range in Virginia on Friday, and that's what I wrote about today in the Washington Times. Because of course he's the chairman, and he was very anti-gun. Wouldn't even answer the question 6 months ago, do you believe in the Second Amendment? And he just said, I just don't want more guns in D.C. So, but then he's been following my stories and reading, and he said to me in City Hall a few weeks ago, I want to go shooting with you, and I've never shot a gun before, and I was really surprised. I didn't think he was serious.
Yes.
I was really thrown off, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Kind of the last thing you expect to come from the last person you expect to come from. But he was really serious about it, and his staff followed up after, and they said he keeps asking when you're taking him shooting. So we organized it, and like you said, there is no shooting ranges in D.C., so you have to go to Virginia or Maryland or neighboring states. So we met at Sharpshooters Range, which is in Lorton, Virginia. And to my great surprise, again, Mr. Brown was a great shot and had a really good time. He was very competitive. I taught him, I started by teaching him, of course, the NRA safety rules, and, was very careful with him going through that. And then I taught him some fundamentals, just basic holding and grip. And then we went into the range, and I let him shoot with a .22, and before not very long, he was making the target push back further, and then he said, I want a real gun. I don't want this gun.
It really was. It was just unbelievable. And then he asked you to say, hey, I want to go hunting now. It was
at the end.
It was a huge step, but did it make a difference when he voted today?
Well, he did vote for the bill, and it did pass unanimously, which was fantastic. And it's funny. I was standing there right before the vote, and he motioned for me to come up to the dais, and I had a copy of the Washington Times in front of me, and he goes, "Let me see it." So I showed it to him, and it's the whole front page of our commentary section, with a huge photo of him with his target that he'd shot, and he was so excited about it. He started showing all the other members, and then Mary Che, who's this councilwoman who actually wrote all these horrible registration laws, started getting competitive, and she goes, "Well, I've been to the range, I've shot," and which is so bizarre. And Chairman Brown kept saying, "Oh, I was a really good shot. Tell him, Emily. Tell him what a great shot I was. Tell him how far back the target was. It was already far back, and tell him all the guns I used." It was just the strangest, most amazing turn of events in D.C. politics that I think I've ever seen.
Well, it is
that they're all
amazing.
competing.
Yep, and you may not change that woman's mind, but maybe you'll change some of the counselors' minds, some of the other counselors' minds. And the point is so important, because before you make a decision and start talking about something you don't know about, find out what's involved. And it's obvious he went, and what happens to most people when they go, they love it.
Exactly, and he kept saying it's so much like a sport. It's so much like a sport. I didn't know, and he just had no idea. And I have to say, when you have the chairman of the city council and all the other council members talking about shooting and talking about how fun it is and laughing and high-fiving each other, and it's just remarkable, because the D.C. has the most stringent gun laws in the country by far.
Yeah.
We have no right to open carry, no right to concealed carry. We have to register our guns. It takes a really long time, the 10-day waiting period, the most restrictive laws in the country, and you've got these lawmakers who are backhandling themselves over who can shoot the furthest. So you're right. It's just the experience is amazing change.
And to add to what you've done, I think what we should do is set up a day where we can take them all out to the range and see who shows up.
My only fear is Marion Barry. I'm not ready to take Marion Barry to a range.
And I'm not sure he'd show up either. But it's a great start. And, you saw what happened today. Did they take up at all the issue? I know that was so important to you, too, that whole issue of the information that was being given out by the police department that was wrong when it comes to transporting your firearms?
Well, unfortunately, it's not in the law, and I was hoping that they would sort of clarify that in the law. But I did talk to Phil Mendelson, who's the chairman of that committee, and he has sent a letter now to the police, very specific letter telling them what they need to fix and change. So I'll be following up with the police department to find out why they haven't yet and put out all this false information on transport laws. I mentioned to the chairman also that the Congress just recently, which I've written about, introduced a bill to clarify federal transport laws, which is really important to gun owners who travel at all. And he looked a little bit askance that this would start coming back at him. So I think Congress moving as well will help force D.C. to get in line.
Mm-hmm. I know you don't want to get overly optimistic, but it sure is a step in the right direction, one we have never really seen. You got to feel good about what you're doing and all the work you did to get this kind of result.
I do, Jenny. I do feel good because, I hear from potential gun owners all the time in D.C., and that is what makes me so happy. They'll say, "Oh, I didn't want to do it," or "It seems so hard, it seems so complicated," and now you make it sound like it's going to be okay and it's going to be much easier, and I want to get a gun. And so just to see, a change, and I think maybe a change in the culture in D.C., that this is, with violent crime doubled so far this year, I think that this is a time when people need to really consider how having a gun can protect them from this. And so it couldn't happen soon enough, if you ask me, to start easing these restrictions.